Welcome, welcome, welcome to all of you for our first webinar of 2022. I am delighted to have all of you join me, and I'm excited about this webinar. It's one of the tenets of SOAR and my approach to working with children. And so if you've seen many of my webinars, you're going to recognize a good portion of what we're going to be talking about today, but it's a wonderful reminder. And I love starting the year thinking about our kids' gifts. Now, years ago, I began looking at the idea that there are hidden gifts in some of our most significant challenges. And, and that really tends to be true. Now, I want to be clear that having some type of learning or attention challenge doesn't necessarily mean it's a gift, because it can be quite debilitating. However, there are experiences in life and our ability to persevere and the things that we go through to create coping mechanisms that create these intangible and remarkable gifts that make our population of kids incredibly special. So for the next 20 minutes, please join me on this journey as we explore some of the wonderful gifts that are hidden in the challenges. All right, so I want to begin by thinking about our kids in this way. Are you a half full or half full person, a half full or half empty? Well, those of you that would say you are half full, you would say you're an optimist. And those of you that are half empty people might say that you're a realist. But I want to ask you, as in particular, as it pertains to this child, if you're looking at a glass and it's half full or half empty, either way, what is your responsibility now as somebody who is loving and caretaking and nurturing these remarkable young students? And my answer is to celebrate the thing that has gone to make it half full, to celebrate what has gone into helping fill that cup to the place that it is, and to try and avoid situations in which we are pouring out those areas. And one of the best ways we can do that is helping our kids recognize the things that go into making them the extraordinary and dynamic and special young people that they are. So how do we go about helping to create that self-awareness and focus on those strengths and abilities? There is no greater gift you can give your child than helping them understand what makes them remarkable and strong and uniquely them in an incredible way. In elementary school, look at learning preferences, develop their talents. In middle school, it's time to start thinking about career interests and maybe what are they inclined to do and chase some of the things that they're really passionate about. In high school, you folks have heard me talk about Strengths Quest, and I think that there's a way that we can really become self-aware about what our core strengths are. And it's important to remember that our future is defined by our strengths. And if we allow ourselves to really invest in that, it pays incredible dividends. So I've also told many of you, as you've heard me speak, that we want to keep our challenge list small, 1, 2, maybe 3 items, and we want to keep our victory list much bigger. How much bigger? Well, a lot bigger, because when we are focusing on our kids' victories, 2 things happen. First, we start to see them in a very different light. And 2, and more importantly, they begin to see themselves in a much different light. And I want to dive into that a little bit, because when we focus on those things that are broken or need fixing, we're like this little kitten staring in a mirror and seeing this meager, measly, pathetic little kitten staring back at them. See, there's a sociological concept called the looking glass self. And essentially what that means is that I think I am who I think you think that I am. I believe about me what I believe you believe about me. So if I think that you think that I am lazy and stupid and unimportant, then I begin to believe that about myself. But if I believe that you think that I'm amazing, and I believe that you think that I can do remarkable things, and that you believe in me, well, the mirror looking back at me is a lion, not a pathetic little uh, kitten. And I want to expound on that because this is the moment that we dive in and we look and we find some of those hidden strengths, because I could see myself as being a distractible person, but instead I choose to understand that I've got a remarkable ability to be multitaskable. I can work on the computer, talk on the phone, work on a document, and somebody can pop their head in the door and I'm going to be able to answer and give them an answer all at the same time. I have others in this office that have, other than, many of you know I'm an adult with ADHD, but I have some folks in this office that have something called ASD, or attention surplus disorder. They are really driven, they focus on one thing at a time. And I'll pop my head in their door and they really hate the intrusion because it broke focus for them. Would it surprise you to know that there are certain jobs out there that are particularly suited, or the fact that we have this multitask ability make us excellent candidates? And a very famous study found that individuals, there was a high rate of suicide for one type of work, and that there was a lower subset that had nearly a 0% of mental health issues associated if you also had ADHD. And that was being an air traffic controller. Why do you suppose that is? Well, it's because our brains are particularly wired to manage a lot of information and sort of keep it all going at the same time. I know that my brain works that way. Are our kids oversensitive? Well, sure, they are. But where's the hidden gift in that? And that is that they are also intuitive and compassionate. In fact, one of the greatest strengths that our kids have, as is shown all the time, is just their deep, deep empathetic sense to nurture and provide support to others. I've got this wonderful story about this young boy who was having a tough time at camp. He was terribly, terribly homesick. In fact, I got a phone call from his parents, and they said, "Hey, is Timmy homesick?" I said, "Yes, he is. How did you know?" And they said, "Well, we got a call from somebody. Apparently, Timmy handed a note to a stranger at the laundromat that says, 'Help! I'm being held against my will. Call my parents.'" So, now Timmy was really lucky because in his group there was a little boy named Jeff, and Jeff came to me and he said, "Hey, Big John, would it be okay with you if I talked to Timmy? I know that he's really struggling, and last summer was my first summer and I was really homesick, and maybe I could help." I said, "Sure, buddy, that would be great." You see, one of the things about kids who are homesick, and one of the great cures of homesickness, is to find connection and make a friend. And so I looked down the trail and I saw Jeff with his arm around Timmy's shoulders, and the two of them were kind of lightly crying and sobbing. And finally, there was somebody who was in Timmy's situation that truly understood what he was going through. And that compassionate side of our kids comes out all the time. I mean, the lengths that these kids will go to be the one that gets to help you. Hey, who wants to give me a hand with something? And I always get so many volunteers. It's just one of my favorite hidden gifts about our kids. You know about the word perseveration. It means sticky thinking. You get stuck on one thing and you just can't get off of it. Sometimes it happens with video games. Sometimes it happens with facts. I had I had one young man, and he just absolutely loved tying knots. And the other thing that he loved was geology and rock formations. Uh, so all the time he was coming up to me and asking me, "Hey, show me this knot. Can you tie this knot differently?" He loved the bowline and different ways to tie the bowline. It finally came to a head late one night. We were up on a backpacking trip, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and he unzips my tent. Big John, he shines his flashlight in my eyes, and he says, "Look at this new knot I invented." It's an absolutely true story. I'm like, "Oh my God, Colin, go build me a hammock." Well, Colin spent the rest of the summer collecting everybody else's leftover string. He'd find string anywhere he could, and he actually presented me with a hammock. Colin is one of those young men who was on the autism spectrum and absolutely would find himself perseverating. Later on in life, Colin really enjoyed and got into pottery and became an excellent potter. But it was difficult for him to make a living at doing pottery because he put so much time and energy and detail into everything that he did. I'm blessed, and I still have it in my office. Colin, that same young man who invented a new knot, made these for me. They are raku pottery, and they turned out exactly as he had planned for them. See, Colin took those perseverative skills and was able to channel them in a very focused way and create some really dynamic things. I'm proud to say that Colin still does things with SOAR, and I'm incredibly proud of the person he's become. Are we disorganized? Well, sure. Yes, we are, but we're also incredibly flexible. Another really fun story. Back when I used to interview staff, I would ask the question, "Are you organized?" And our staff would answer the question one of two ways. They would either say, "Oh my goodness, yes, I'm very organized. I keep lists, and my lists have subheadings, and my lists have lists." Or they would answer the question and they would say, "Well, to be perfectly honest, organization is something that I'm working on." Which means if you hire me and I arrive, please don't look in my car. Now, I will also tell you that I ask a second question, a follow-up question to my organization question. I'll ask, "Are you flexible?" Now, the folks who answered that organization was something they were working on, love that question, because they delight in telling you that they are absolutely flexible. They can shift on a dime. It's one of their great strengths. One of my list makers, when I asked her if she could be flexible, I promise you this was her actual answer in an interview. "Well, I suppose if I had enough advance notice." Now, the world needs both of those folks. For sure, they need both of those folks. But I have found a flexibility that is created out of our need to be flexible because we often are hounds of chaos. And our disorganization sometimes leads to coping mechanisms and strategies that allow us to be incredibly flexible in how we manage and deal with, pardon me, a variety of situations. You want another one? All right, here we go. Are we daydreamers or are we creative? Now, this next little pop-up I'm particularly proud of because I went to my daughter, who is incredibly ADHD, and asked her to draw me a picture of what a daydreamer and the essence of creativity, and how that challenge can be viewed as a strength. And in 20 minutes, this is what she came up with. It's a young boy sitting under a tree, living in a black and white world, but daydreaming in color. I get I get just shivers just every time I look at it. This means so much to me. But it really speaks so wonderfully to the idea that, that the world is not changed by the rule followers. It's changed by the dreamers. It's changed by the ones who are willing to kind of think out of the box. And for some of us, we would ask, what box? I deeply appreciate the creative energy that comes from the problem solving that often comes with this hidden gift. Are we procrastinators? Absolutely. We are absolutely procrastinators. And let me just ask this question of you. Are you a procrastinator? And could you see a hidden gift in being a procrastinator? See, I have found that there's an arousal continuum, and it's stress related. And so if we hit a particularly heightened level of stress, then the fog clears and we can perform incredibly well, because we've created that mild sense of stress. Now, if that bubble gets too high and the stress is overwhelming, then individuals can fold or begin to shut down and not perform. But in order to perform, there needs to be some measure of stress. And a great example of that for any of you listening is, did you ever wait until the last minute to turn in that term paper? And you're burning the midnight oil the night before it's due. And how clear and concise and succinct and sharp was your brain working that night, because you knew the deadline was looming? And so for those of us who are, who have procrastination, the hidden gift in that is that we are deadline oriented. That deadlines really help us guide and lead successful lives. And that we have to have those deadlines, and those deadlines can't just be, arbitrary or unimportant. A good deadline has to have teeth. And so I love this little Hobbes, Calvin and Hobbes. Do you have an idea for your story yet? No, I'm waiting for inspiration. You can't just turn on creativity like a faucet. You have to be in the right mood. And Hobbes asks, what mood is that? And Calvin responds, last minute panic. I have done some remarkable things with last minute panic, and so have many of your kids. And the idea for you, the way to turn that and draw out that hidden gift in that challenge, is to create smaller deadlines, to create chunks, and provide opportunities that have these little mini deadlines with teeth that help us get to where we're trying to go. Are we rigid? Are some of our kids rigid, like this stubborn little guy? Absolutely. Absolutely. But sometimes there's a beauty in that. There's this incredible structure. It may seem chaotic at first, but everything is functioning the way that it's supposed to. And when we spend time embracing the rigidity that some of our kids have, and understand that the secret structure that is created there, we actually begin to understand how to approach them, and understand that gift is going to be something that is going to be one of the most remarkable and powerful things that they have in their life. Are we stubborn? Oh my God, you bet we are. We're incredibly stubborn. But there are educational theorists out there that believe that our stubborn traits are actually our greatest gifts, because it's not easy growing up with a learning or disability or ADHD. It's just not. It's hard. And some kids sail through high school and then they hit the real world and get slapped in the face with how hard it is. But what happens to those of us that have been struggling and grinding the entire time, we've developed this tenacious spirit, this understanding that life isn't going to be easy. It's going to take work, and we're better prepared for it. There's this wonderful Pluggers cartoon. It says, we pluggers never lower our goals. We just find ways to boost our capabilities. And it's true. It is these coping mechanisms. It's this entire webinar wrapped up into one slide. It is our ability to overcome the challenges. That's where the gifts lay. Finally, are our kids manipulative? You bet they are. But define manipulation for me. All right. Some would say that manipulation is the ability to get others to do what you want them to do. Okay, now define leadership for me. Now, what's not fair about that, right, is that manipulation is typically very selfish and scheming. But at its core, at its very core, leadership is somebody stepping forward and trying to make sure that you can follow the path that they want you to follow. And if you can turn those skills from being something that is selfish and self-focused and make it so that they are using those same manipulative tactics, but for a greater good, you begin to determine the seeds of leadership. So rather than, how do you want your child to see themselves? As distractible, oversensitive, perseverating, disorganized, daydreaming, procrastinating, rigid, stubborn little manipulators? Or do you want them to see themselves as multitasking, intuitive, ultra-focused, flexible, creative, deadline-oriented, structured, tenacious leaders? See, the choice is yours. The choice in how you choose to look at some of those challenges and draw out the gift, they result in this young lady who drew that wonderful picture for you that you saw about the daydreaming, creative, structured leader. This is a young lady who understands her worth. Because when she looks in the mirror, this is what she sees. I hope that you've enjoyed, and I would like to just share that my child, Jennifer, wrote that my child is amazing and has come so far in her 16 years, yet seems to be drowning and hiding. How can I help teach my child grit and working through the challenges? She quits when she hits a bump. Well, Jennifer, we're actually going to do another workshop on grit. We've done a couple, but I will do one again in 2 months. And the simple answer is that you create opportunities for her to practice grit, and then you allow them to fail forward, and then remember that they can accomplish difficult things, but you create the safety net for them while that's happening. That was great. You're a parent of all those words. You hit it at the end, summarizing sort of like a 2-column chart. This PowerPoint will be available to all of you, and so you'll be able to go online and just download the PowerPoint, and you can absolutely make that grid. I created that grid about 20 years ago, and it has been absolutely the essence and core of how I choose to work with all individuals. All right, I'll give just a second for anyone to ask an additional question, but I do want to tell you that for February, February 15th at 2:00, we're going to do a webinar called Understanding Your Child's Love Language, perfect for Valentine's Day. All right, so, and then Stephanie wrote, can't wait to, let's see, thank you. My son often sees praise for his gifts as pressure. That was Claire. That's true. I'm so glad you asked that question, because I talk a lot about praise, and so one of the things that you want to make sure that you do is you only praise your children for things that they can control. If you praise them for things that are out of their control, that pressure becomes just incredibly difficult to handle. So if for instance, if you praise them for being, really pretty or really smart, those are things that kids don't have control over. But if you praise them for the tremendous effort that they're giving to something, or their ability to kind of just keep working hard, what pressure does that create? All I ask is for you to give me your very best. And so, so being very careful about how you word that praise so that it's all based on effort can help mitigate some of that. Stephanie, we can't wait to have your have camp this summer where your son can come spread his wings and fly too. All right. Let's see. Thank you. And to all the parents in this club, you are doing your best. Keep it up. I love it. Yes, all of our old webinars are online. You can find them at soarnc.org/webinars. And there's lots of wonderful, wonderful content. We're going to do a webinar a month in January, February, March, and April. We'll take a break for the summer in June, July, and August. I guess we'll do one in May, and then we'll crank back up in September. Thank you so much. And we definitely appreciate your attendance. Keep coming, keep giving us your feedback. Tell everyone you know about it. These webinars are free to anybody, and I look forward to seeing you in a month. All right. Happy New Year, everybody. Bye-bye.